Hey guys, I'll give it a minute for everybody to hop on and then I'll start recording here in a minute. Oh, hang on, I forgot to do something over here. So I can make sure that I see your comments and stuff. Maybe, here we go. That's the bad thing about having to pull things up over here, is it takes a minute to get everything going. What am I trying to do now? Here we go. Oh, and I don't even have my microphone plugged in. Sorry guys, it took me a little bit longer to get hopped on here because dealing with some stuff behind the scenes. I feel like that's the story of my life. But let's see. All right. So kind of like we did the other day, I'm probably not gonna see comments as much and respond to as many comments. Sorry guys, I'm moving my microphone around so I can get everything done. You guys can hear me, not you guys, but when I'm recording. So I'm probably not going to see so much of the recording. So let me put that in here and then I'll pin the comment. Why I gave the option to pin, but for some reason has not let me pin, so I have to do it here. All right. So again, I am recording, so I will likely be repeating some slides as I trip up over words because it is just inevitable that is going to happen. But enjoy while I am going through all of this stuff. The brain is composed of the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem, which is further divided into the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. The cerebrum comprises the largest part of the brain, and it is divided into hemispheres that is connected by the corpus callosum. Cerebral hemispheres are made up of elevations and valleys, and your hemispheres are going to be divided into lobes, which correspond roughly to the names given to your skull bones. Each cerebral hemisphere has 4 major lobes: the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. The front lobe is separated from the parietal lobe by the central sulcus. The gyrus just anterior to the central sulcus is called the precentral gyrus, and this is the primary motor area of the brain. The rest of the frontal lobe is used in modifying motor acts. Your posterior end of the brain is the occipital lobe, mainly concerned with vision. And then the cerebellum will protrude under the occipital lobe at the base of the brain, and it is primarily concerned with coordination of voluntary muscles. Organs of sense are classified as a subsection of the nervous system. The sensory organs receive and filter your sensory input that is interpreted in the central nervous system. Organs of sense will include your eyes and your ears. The eye is the sense organ of sight. The eyeball is made up of 3 layers. You have the innermost layer, which is the retina, the middle layer, known as the choroid, and the outermost layer is the sclera. The eyeball is separated into an anterior segment that is filled with the aqueous humor, and then a posterior segment filled with vitreous humor. The crystalline lens separates the 2 segments. The aqueous humor is responsible for the intraocular pressure within your eye. The vitreous humor will share the responsibility for the intraocular pressure, but it also prevents the eyeball from collapsing. One of the most common procedures on the eye is actually on the muscles that control the eye movement instead of the eyeball itself. That is known as a strabismus surgery, and that is performed by shortening or lengthening various muscles within the eye. The ear plays a part in both sense of hearing and the sense of equilibrium. The ear works in tandem with the auditory nerves to send auditory impulses to the temporal lobes of the cerebrum. These structures working together will form your auditory apparatus. The ear has 3 distinct and separate anatomical divisions: the outer or the external ear, the middle ear or the tympanic cavity, and then the inner ear or the labyrinth. The auditory apparatus uses the ear to capture sound waves and transmits or conducts them into the tiny hair cells in the organ of Corti. Your dendrites, or the nerve endings of the sensory neurons for hearing, will be found at the bottom of these tiny hair cells. The auditory canal, or the eustachian tube, will connect each middle ear to the throat. This allows easy transfer of infections in the throat to move into the ear, causing a middle ear infection. Children who have repetitive ear infections at an early age will sometimes have tubes placed within their ears. Otology is the study of the ear. This is a very specialized field of medicine, and you have 2 types of services: audiometry and surgical. Surgical services are often performed by an ENT physician, and then codes for procedures are typically found in the surgery section of your CPT codebook. Audiometry services are studies to test and improve your hearing. These codes for the services are typically found in your medicine section of the CPT codebook. The endocrine... No, hang on. I do not like the way that this is. So I'm going to X out of here really quick, do a couple of adjustments to the slide, and then we will get back into it. Parathyroid. See, I think that it looks good until I go to start recording it, and it's really not a matter of like the slide itself doesn't look good, but I feel like I need to kind of break up the information on the slides a little bit as far as like the way that I say it. Okay, like that. The endocrine system is comprised of ductless glands, which are hormones that are secreted directly into the blood. No, hang on. That's not what that sentence is supposed to say. The endocrine is comprised of ductless glands where hormones are secreted directly into the blood. There we go. The endocrine system is comprised of ductless glands where hormones are secreted directly into the blood, and then cells throughout the body secreting hormones and chemical substances that regulate our bodily functions such as our metabolism, growth, reproduction, and water balance. Glands are organized aggregations of cells functioning as secretory or excretory organs. More simply, a gland produces a chemical or a hormone that affects distant tissues within the body. Hormones are chemical messengers. They are classified as either proteins or steroids. Your hormones will stimulate target tissues or organs by binding to cell receptors located either on the cell membrane or within the cell. The thyroid is located anteriorly in the neck on either side of the larynx and the trachea. This gland is composed of secretory units called follicles. Follicular cells will secrete T3 and T4 hormones, and those thyroid hormones have regulatory functions in metabolism and functioning in all other hormones, and they are required for growth and development. Your parathyroid glands are pairs of small structures that are deep and posterior on the lateral lobes of the thyroid. Essential for life, these parathyroids will regulate calcium metabolism that is so important in our muscular and nervous systems. In the fetus, the thymus is a large organ that occupies considerable space within the thoracic cavity. It continues to grow until puberty, and then it decreases in size and is largely replaced by fat. It contains a large number of lymphocytes, and the cells produced by this are called T lymphocytes or T cells. These produce and secrete hormones in order to control our immune functions. The adrenal or suprarenal glands will lie on the superior end of each kidney. Their function is completely separate from the kidneys, and there are two distinct parts. You have an outer cortex and an inner medulla. The adrenal medulla secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine. Collectively, these are called catecholamines, and they're also sometimes called our fight or flight hormones. And those, hang on, that sentence is worded weird. The adrenal medulla secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine, collectively called your catecholamines. Also sometimes okay. In the fetus, the thymus is a large organ occupying considerable space within your thoracic cavity. It continues to grow until puberty, and then it will decrease in size, and it is largely replaced by fat. It contains a large number of lymphocytes, and the cells produced are called T lymphocytes or T cells, and these will produce and secrete hormones to control our immune functions. The adrenal or suprarenal glands will lie on the superior end of each kidney. Their function is completely separate from the kidneys themselves, and you have two distinct parts, an outer cortex and an inner medulla. The adrenal medulla will secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine, and these are collectively called our catecholamines, and these are also called sometimes the fight or flight hormones. And these epinephrine and norepinephrine are secreted into the blood. The medulla is considered an extension of the sympathetic nervous system, and a tumor of the adrenal medulla is called a pheochromocytoma. The adrenal cortex, which is essential to life, is divided further into three distinct zones: the zona glomerulosa, the zona fasciculate, and zona reticularis. The cortex secretes 3 steroid hormones, which are lipid soluble and made from cholesterol. The cortex makes glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, and steroids. The primary glucocorticoid is cortisol, which affects our carbohydrates and fat metabolism for energy production. Cortisol is secreted into... Nope, I skipped a line while I was reading. Sometimes my eyes get all cross-eyed. I need to break up that paragraph a little bit. Mineral corticoid, and then secreted sex hormones. I think I am gonna break this up a little bit more though, so give me just a second on the slide. Because what happens is, like, a little bit of extra, who really cares that, you know, it is what it is. I have multiple paragraphs on a single slide, and I can't pause the recording. So, like, I have to basically say everything all at once. So what I have to do is I have to have essentially the same slide duplicated, and then do different pieces. So it doesn't look like whenever I'm like going from slide to slide, it doesn't appear that there's a change. So that way, if I have 8 paragraphs of things I have to read, I typically will have 8 different slides that look exactly the same, but they're broken up. So if I struggle in the 5th paragraph, I'm not having to re-record all 5 paragraphs, if that makes sense. So I had to break. Now, which one did I already record is the main question. Okay, here we go. In the fetus, the thymus is a large organ occupying considerable amounts of space within the thoracic cavity. It continues to grow until puberty, and then it decreases in size and is largely replaced by fat. It contains a large number of lymphocytes, and the cells produced are called T lymphocytes, or T cells, and it produces and secretes our hormones to control immune functions. The adrenal or suprarenal glands will lie on the superior end of each kidney. Their function is completely separate from the kidneys, and you have 2 distinct parts. You have the outer cortex and the inner medulla. The adrenal medulla will secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are collectively called our catecholamines, into the bloodstream. These are also sometimes called our fight or flight hormones. The medulla is considered an extension of the sympathetic nervous system, and a tumor of the adrenal medulla is called a pheochromocytoma. The adrenal cortex, which is essential to life, is divided further into 3 distinct zones: zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculate, and the zona reticularis. The cortex secretes 3 steroid hormones, which are lipid soluble and made from cholesterol. The cortex makes our glucocorticoids, mineral corticoids, and sex steroids. The primary glucocorticoid is cortisol, which affects our carbohydrates and maintains blood glucose levels, and cortisol is secreted in times of stress. It also affects protein and fat metabolism for energy production. Mineral corticoids will help regulate our blood pressure and concentration of electrolytes. Aldosterone is the primary mineral corticoid, and I said that word really weird. Mineral corticoid. I said coin. The adrenal cortex, essential to life, is divided further into 3 distinct zones: zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculate, and zona reticularis. The cortex secretes 3 steroid hormones, which are lipid soluble and made from cholesterol. The cortex makes glucocorticoids, mineral corticoids, and sex steroids. The primary glucocorticoid is cortisol, which affects our carbohydrates and maintains our blood glucose levels. Cortisol is secreted in times of stress, and it also affects our protein and fat metabolism for energy production. Mineral corticoids will help regulate our blood pressure and concentration of electrolytes. Aldosterone is the primary mineral corticoid, and its primary target organ is the kidney. Secreted sex hormones include small amounts of the female hormone estrogen and the male hormone androgen, which is primarily testosterone. The pancreas is both an endocrine and an exocrine organ, as previously reviewed. The carotid body, I don't know why some words are so hard for me to say. The pancreas is both an endocrine and an exocrine organ. The carotid body is a chemoreceptor monitoring the oxygen level within the blood. It is not an endocrine structure, but it is listed by CPT within the endocrine system code set. The pituitary gland is about the size of a pea, located at the base of the brain. It is divided into anterior and posterior lobes. The posterior lobe is attached to the brain by an endofibulum, and the anterior lobe has no direct connection within the brain. The pineal gland is a small cone-shaped gland above the cerebellum, and it's close to the thalamus deep within the brain. It secretes melatonin, thought to play a role in biorhythms and then the sleep-wake cycle, and it may also be involved in other functions. The kidneys, testes, and ovaries are glands that secrete hormones. I'm going to do that one again. The pancreas is both an endocrine and exocrine organ. The carotid body is a chemoreceptor monitoring the oxygen level within the blood. It is not an endocrine structure. However, it is listed in CPT with the endocrine system code set. The pituitary gland is about the size of a pea, located at the base of the brain. It is divided into an anterior and posterior lobe. The posterior lobe is attached to the brain by an infundibulum, and the anterior lobe has no direct connection with the brain. The pineal gland is small, cone-shaped, and above the cerebellum, and it's also close to the thalamus deep within the brain. It secretes melatonin, which is thought to play a role in biorhythms and the sleep-wake cycle, and it may be involved in other functions. The kidney, testes, and ovaries are glands that secrete hormones. These three glands are covered within other sections. The lymphatic system is part of the immune system. It runs through the body very similar to the way that the cardiovascular system does. The primary function of the lymphatic system is to transport lymph, which is a fluid containing infection-fighting white blood cells or lymphocytes, throughout the... Nope. I don't like the way that I paused on that one. The lymphatic system is part of the immune system. It runs through the body similarly to the way that the cardiovascular system does. The primary function of the lymphatic system is to transport lymph, which is a fluid that contains infection-fighting white blood cells or lymphocytes throughout the body. In addition to the immune functions, the lymphatic system is a network of tissues and organs that help rid the body of toxins, waste, and other unwanted materials by removing additional fluid from tissues throughout the body and absorbing and moving fatty acids. The spleen is an organ in the upper portion of the abdomen that is located to the left of the liver. The spleen is a blood filtering organ as well as a receptacle for red blood cells. It also plays a role in the immune system by producing lymphocytes that are involved in the infection fighting process. The immune system is classified as a separate system. Sometimes my eyes go faster than my mouth, and it throws me off. The immune system is classified as a separate system from the hematologic system. However, most immune cells originate in the hematologic system. Hematologic. Why am I saying hematologic? Does anybody ever do that? Like, you know how to pronounce a word and you get it out and you're like, that doesn't even sound right. Hematologic. The immune system is classified as a separate system from the hematologic system. However, most immune cells originate within the hematologic system. Often the study of allergies will go hand in hand because an allergic response is actually an immune response. The immune system is made up of two types of cells, B cells and T cells. B cells are created and mature in the bone marrow. They get activated and produce antibodies that attach to the surface of the infectious agent. T cells identify infectious agents and directly attack them. Both T cells and B cells are lymphocytes. Other types of white blood cells used by the body for protection will include neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. Antigens will elicit an immune response within the body. Antigens that enter the body from the environment can include inhaled macromolecules. See, this is why sometimes it takes me an entire day to record a 20-minute or 40-minute presentation, is because I get caught up. Antigens will elicit an immune response in the body. Antigens that enter the body from the environment can include inhaled macromolecules, so for example, proteins on cat hairs that can trigger an asthma attack. Then you have ingested macromolecules, such as shellfish proteins that trigger an allergic response or a peanut allergy. And then lastly, you'll just have molecules, and these are introduced beneath the skin, such as a splinter or in an injected vaccine. Antibodies are immune system related proteins called immunoglobulins. Some antibodies will destroy antigens directly, and others indirectly by making it easier for white blood cells to destroy the antigen. Now that you are at the end of the lecture, you should understand the different word elements, different diagnostic and procedural terms, and then basic anatomy for each of the body systems. Don't forget to view the attachments and resources that are found within our module. All right, so that is the end of midterm. Let me get this saved and work on getting it exported. While I am doing that, do you have any questions? Do you have anything you want me to answer while I'm not recording and stumbling over words? Because it does take a second for it to export. Oh, MJ, you got the CPC boot camp. Sorry, I just now saw that comment that you had up there. All right, so I am exporting that. Let me get... We've already done pharmacology. We did that one the other night. So now we need to work on ICD-10. We will likely not get all the way through ICD-10 because I do have to stop about like 12:15 because I have an appointment. So I'm not going to be able to just sit on here and record all day as much as I wish I could so that I could just get it done. Rudy, any helpful tips on CPC exam for timing yourself with answering 100 questions? Make sure you're using your process of elimination. That is absolutely key when you are taking your exam because you have multiple choices. We know one of those 4 choices is going to be the correct answer. Process of elimination is going to be huge while you are taking the exam because if you try to look everything up from scratch, you will run out of time. That's an almost guarantee. So make sure you're using your process of elimination. Rule out as many as you can, as quickly as you can. Usually there are going to be 2 that you can rule out fairly quickly. And then use that with those 2 that are left and find the differences in the codes. And then look those codes up and try to figure out what your correct one is. Hey, Jen. Can you use level 4? Okay, so with E&M, it's not a wise practice to use level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 with E&M. We could have used that verbiage years ago, but now that we have our MDM that we have to level, and then we have to have 2 components of our MDM in order to appropriately level it, you need a little bit more than just prescription drug management. If you have a moderate amount and complexity of moderate amount and complexity of problems addressed, and your prescription drug management, then at that point, yes, you can use a moderate overall of MDM. So a 99214, 99204, right? But you have to make sure that you're meeting 2 of those elements of your MDM in order to choose your quote unquote 4th level. And I'm using that very loosely. But trust me, I know if you've been in the industry for a while or you work with people that have been in the industry, I've been guilty of it too, calling it a level 4. But they changed all of the verbiage about 5 years ago, which has been really nice from the aspect of we only have to level MDM and we no longer have to level our exam and history and all of that as well. But to answer your question, essentially, sorry, I know I kind of went on a little bit of a soapbox there for a second. You can consider prescription drug to be used, quote unquote, just in case. Then yes, that can be used for a moderate risk of complications because we are giving them that we're having to, or our physician or provider, I guess, our provider is actually like putting in their thought process on the prescription drug, so that would be considered prescription drug management. Yep. So it's going to be the same if like we write a prescription or the physician recommends a prescription, but the patient denies. That's still going to be able to be allowed for prescription drug management because we are telling the patient, yes, you need to take this, but the patient is refusing or denying it. So just because they're not taking it does not mean that the provider didn't put in their knowledge or the expertise on prescribing that medication. Does that make sense, Jamie? All right, just another minute or so on letting MedTerm and anatomy process. And then we'll start recording for ICD-10. So what we're doing here, just in case anybody's kind of like new to what I'm doing, or you're just hopping on or whatever, I am working on creating a free intro to medical coding course. This is not going to be like to replace any type of coding course. This is just going to be like an introduction. It's going to give an introduction to MedTerm, an introduction to pharmacology, an introduction to ICD-10. It's not going to go into any chapter-specific guidelines. It's not going to go into CPT guidelines. It's just going to kind of do the basics of things that people tend to struggle with when they jump straight into a course. So Rachel and I decided to create kind of this introduction course that can kind of give people an idea of what coding is to see if it's something that they want to, if they want to go into the field. Sherilyn, yes, the Wednesday night class for study group, it is up on YouTube. Yep, so if you go to YouTube for medical coding with Legacy Education, and then your playlist for the 2025 CPC study group, Wednesday night is up. I am also working on getting those 2 sessions for, I think, nervous and medicine. I have to get those 2 sections since we had to kind of work schedule around with sickness and all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to work on getting those recorded this week as well. Yeah, Paula, we've had a lot of students say, I wish I had something like that. And so that's why we decided to work on it and get it up. So we're going to work on getting this up. We're going to work on getting that standalone course up. That probably won't happen until like the end of June. That one's taking a little bit longer than what we expected. Chapter 14. Which one is 14? Remind me. Is that nervous and endocrine? Chapter 14? I'd have to look at my book. My brain's not in course mode today since I'm working on this intro stuff. Oh, the entire process. That's okay. Yeah. I know. It's a lot. Have you watched, Paula, the study group sessions that I have out on YouTube? Have you tried to go through those and go through the scenarios as we go through them? All right. Intro to ICD-10. Yes, the videos on YouTube are free. Absolutely. Anything that's on the public YouTube. Again, the link is in my bio to get to that. Or you can go to YouTube and just do a search for medical coding with Legacy Education. need to set a timer on my phone because I cannot see my clock on all three of my screens that I have up. My clock is not showing on any of my screens. So I do have to do a hard stop around like 12. So I mean, we'll only get about 20 minutes in with this, but it's still better than nothing. All right. Welcome to Module 5, Introduction to ICD-10-CM. To start, let's spend some time looking at the structure of the ICD-10-CM codebook and becoming familiar with navigating through the codebook itself. The very front of the codebook will contain coding conventions and the official ICD-10-CM guidelines for coding and reporting. After the ICD-10-CM guidelines, you find the Index to Diseases and Injuries, which is also referred to as the Alphabetic Index. The Alphabetic Index is where we will start to locate our ICD-10-CM codes for particular diagnoses. You also have two tables to help guide us in the right direction, which will include the table of neoplasms and then the table of drugs and chemicals. These are followed by the Index to External Cause of Injuries. The tabular list follows the Index to External Cause of Injuries. The tabular list is going to be the section that contains the actual numerical ICD-10-CM codes, their descriptions, and any applicable notes. The conventions for the ICD-10-CM are the general rules for the use of classification independent of the guidelines. These conventions are incorporated within the alphabetic index and the tabular list of the ICD-10-CM as instructional notes. The ICD-10-CM is divided into the alphabetic index, the alphabetic list of terms and their corresponding codes, and then the tabular list, which is a structured list of codes that is divided into chapters based on body system or conditions. The alphabetic index consists of the following parts. You have the Index of Diseases and Injury, the Index of External Causes of Injury, the Table of Neoplasms, and then the Table of Drugs and Chemicals. The ICD-10-CM tabular list contains categories, subcategories, and codes. Characters for categories, subcategories, and codes can be either a letter or a number. All categories are 3 characters. A 3-character category that has no further subdivision is equivalent to a code. Subcategories are either 4 or 5 characters. Codes can be anywhere from 3 to 7 characters. Each level of subdivision after a category is known as a subcategory. The final level of subdivision is known as your code. Codes will have applicable 7th characters, and these are still referred to as codes and not subcategories. So a code that has an applicable 7th character is considered invalid when that 7th character is not applied. Your ICD-10-CM will use an indented format for ease in reference. The ICD-10-CM utilizes a placeholder with the character X. The X is used as a placeholder at certain codes to allow for future expansion. An example of this is at the poisoning, adverse effect, and underdosing codes, categories T36 through T50. Where a placeholder exists, the X must be used in order for the code to be considered a valid code. Certain ICD-10-CM categories have applicable 7th characters. The applicable 7th character is required for all codes within the category, or as the notes in the tabular list will instruct. The 7th character must always be in the 7th position, and if a code that requires a 7th character is not 6 characters, then a placeholder X must be used to fill in those empty characters. The coding conventions are the standards or rules that are used throughout your ICD-10-CM. They include your instructional notes, abbreviations, cross-reference notes, punctuation marks, and relational terms such as and, with, and due to. So let's take a look at some of them. The abbreviation NOS means not otherwise specified. NOS is the same as an unspecified code, and it means that you lack the information to use a more specific code. As an example, the provider documents sinusitis with no further descriptions. When you look for sinusitis in the alphabetic index, you are directed to ICD-10-CM code J32.9. Turning to the tabular list, you look at J32.9. The description of the code is chronic sinusitis, unspecified. Underneath the description, there is an inclusion term for sinusitis, NOS. This is the code that is reported for sinusitis without further description. Let's take a look at another convention, the parentheses. The ICD-10-CM codebook utilizes parentheses in the index to diseases and injuries to enclose supplementary words or descriptive information that may present in the statement of a diagnosis. These terms are non-essential modifiers and they do not affect your code assignment. Pneumonia is a good example of a diagnosis with multiple non-essential modifiers. If the pneumonia is stated as acute pneumonia, you will see acute is a non-essential modifier, so it would still be used to code pneumonia. However, if the pneumonia is stated as adenoviral pneumonia, the word adenoviral is not listed in the non-essential modifiers, but it is listed as a subterm, so it alters the definition. Therefore, you must report the more defining code. You do have several additional conventions within your code book, so take time to read through those carefully. And that slide apparently did not have anything written on it. Let me look. I thought I had something in there, but I had to duplicate this one at one point. So let me look at something here really quickly. Oh, I gotta type it up real quick. For the dual program, is the book bundle online only? No, if you do the dual program, then you get your physical copy of the textbook and the workbook, and then you get physical copies of the 3 coding manuals. So everything is hard copy. Now, with the exception right now, because there's always something that has to throw a kink into things. AAPC does have the textbook for the CPC course. It is on back order, but it is coming. So instead of the physical copy immediately, you will get an ebook for the textbook, and then once they are back in stock, then the physical copy will be shipped out. When am I live? I do subscription only lives, Sundays, Saturdays, and Sundays. The other lives, I don't really have a set schedule, to be totally honest, as far as when I go live that's not part of the subscription, just because I don't want to dedicate time to something that I can't promise. So I try to go live a couple times a week, but I don't really make any guarantees on it. I usually do not do it during the day during the week because I do have a full-time job. However, I will say that I'm off today, so that's the only reason I'm able to do my live today during the day. Will I ever have a CRC exam review live or a class? So I am working on, I feel like I have my iron in like so many fires right now. I am slowly working on getting a CRC boot camp done. And then I'm trying to get some free resources out for you guys, in the next couple of weeks. And then I'm going to start working on like the CRC boot camps. I don't have any plans for doing a CRC live course just because I don't have a lot of interest in that. But I do have the CRC self-paced course, and then you guys can schedule, if you're a CRC student or really any student of Legacy, you can schedule coaching sessions with me. So you get 30 minutes a week to go over any topic. So if you do the self-paced CRC course, and then you, like I said, you can schedule coaching with me as much as you need. I likely will not have a COC course, just because it's not a super popular certification, if I'm being totally honest. Most employers don't really like require a COC certification. If you're doing facility type billing, they want you to have the CCS instead of the COC. So in total transparency, I have my COC only because when I went to school, I did an associate's program. I kind of got duped into it. I've kind of talked about that a lot. But when I went to school, I did my associate's program, and the COC was included in my associate's program. So that's the only reason I have it. I've never personally used it. I've always been on the professional side of things, and I've never really done anything from the facility side. I will be totally honest. I probably would have to restudy over again if I were to ever get an outpatient facility position, because it's been 10 years at least since I've even like looked at it and, done anything with it. Hang on, it's making me do some weird verification thing, and I have to be like super specific with it. And it's not two objects that are the same shape. I have an M and an M. There we go. You're doing your CIC course? Yeah, I tried to do that one last year, and ICD-10 PCS, my brain just does not want to wrap around it. I think I've been on the professional side too long that my poor brain just doesn't make sense of the chaos that is there. But again, most of your employers are going to prefer the CCS over the CIC. So that's another reason. So we're putting feelers out there to try to find somebody that is CCS certified and is qualified to teach, that is a HEMA approved instructor, to try to find somebody that can do inpatient coding for us to prepare people for the CCS. But we haven't found anybody yet. So that is something that we are in the process of doing. But again, we have a bunch of other plans and free resources and things that we're wanting to get out as well. All right. Within the ICD-10-CM code set, you will have codes that are indicated as other and unspecified. Other codes will be used when the record gives more detail than the code set contains. These codes will correlate with the abbreviation NEC or not elsewhere classified. Your unspecified codes will be used when there's not enough information within the record to assign a more specific code. These codes will correlate with the abbreviation NOS or not otherwise specified. I don't know what happened to all of my notes on these slides, because they were just there and now they're disappearing. All right, I gotta type this one out too. I don't know if I thought I saved it and I closed out of it and I didn't actually save it. I don't know. And if I could type today, my life would be much more simple. Does anybody ever know how to type, and then as soon as you're like trying to do it under pressure, then you very quickly realize you don't know how to type? All right, so that being said, that was my timer. I have to hop off because, like I said, I have an appointment at 1 that I have to drive to. So we got a couple slides in, but what my plan is, I can't guarantee I'm going to do it tonight. I'm going to try to get ICD-10-CM done either today or tomorrow. So whenever I am able to get back into things and start recording again, I will go live again and do it, because I obviously you guys are, benefiting from it. Anything I can put out there is free resources for you guys. But then as soon as we get the opportunity to get our intro to coding course up, that is going to be completely free, then we will get that out there, and we'll do all of the announcements for all of that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, if y'all have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to reach out. I have an appointment, but I'll be available to chat. It's a hair appointment. It's not anything. It is important because my poor hair needs it. But I'll have my phone with me. So if you guys need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. And then if not, I will see you guys on the subscription only live in the morning. I'll probably go live a little bit early, about like 9:30 in the morning for subscription only. So if you guys haven't subscribed, it's $8.99 a month. It gives you access to the Saturday morning scenario reviews, and then it gives you access to the Sunday evening at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 hours of book prep. So you all have a good night. I will chat with you soon, and have a good weekend.